Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, lovely people, depending on where you are in the world watching us live here on YouTube. I am so delighted that I now have my second guest under the new title, Unsilence Grief. We have relaunched this podcast last
Good
week.
evening,
And
good morning,
here
and good
I can hear
afternoon, lovely.
myself. I'm going to switch it off. There you go. That's better. Sorry. It's always the lovely technical difficulties at the beginning. So without further ado, I just want to say a very warm welcome to Regan Espinosa. Regan, thank you so much for joining us here today. Would you do me the honor to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. My name's Regan Espinosa, and I love that I got connected with you, unfortunately, through grief, but also it's a blessing in the grief journey. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really was very excited when I came across you. And as you said, through the work of grief, and I often say, there's so many highlights in our grief journey as well. And the podcast Unsilence Grief is really about that, to highlight the beautiful things about grief, but also share our story really raw and open. And you have a really beautiful story to share. I was so taken away with, how you shared about your dad, your story about a photo blowing in the wind. We'll talk about that. I'm not going to take that away from your story. I'll let you share that. And I came across you, I believe, on LinkedIn, and I saw a post and I followed your link to your website, who you are, what you do. And I reached out and I said, hey, we need to connect. I really like to hear your story. So I know a little bit about your story, but I invited you to unpack that with our audience here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how we actually came to talk? I'd really love to hear your story from you about your beautiful dad.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix this real quick. Can you
Yeah.
see me okay?
Yes, I can see
Yeah.
you.
Uh, well, my dad, I would say I was a daddy's girl. I just think that we had such a great relationship. And he was an amazing survivor and thriver. And he was a farmer, lived in Indiana,
Mhm.
and he had survived melanoma cancer like 15 years ago. Then all of a sudden he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and he survived that after a Whipple surgery that's about 8 hours long. They just thought he was this miracle. And so he just had this really great lease on life. And then unfortunately, I just had talked to him. He went to take a bath, and then my mom had found him and he had a sudden heart attack. And
Mm.
it was during COVID. So we really had like that distance
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
He was really looking forward to coming to Colorado, where me and my husband and children live. And I
Mhm.
was just waiting and waiting. So it was really hard. The last time I saw him, there was like no hugs, but I got to go home and spend time with him about 2 months before he had passed.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that is such an important thing that you just mentioned here, the not getting the chance to say goodbye. I think that is something that a lot of people struggle with. I was the same with my dad. I never had the chance to say goodbye. So I really understand what that means. You always think you've got another day, another year, another decade. You never know how long we've got. So
yeah.
how did you deal with that?
Well, COVID, we were all in this house together. So three kids, my husband working downstairs. I was working um, through telemedicine as occupational therapist.
Mm,
And he got a call. I had no idea. And he had the kids set up and took me in the other room
mm,
and shared with me that my dad suddenly died. And we had to decide at that time what was going to happen. Would
yeah,
I just go home by myself? What was best at the time? We had no idea. My husband unfortunately lost an uncle to COVID
yeah,
months before. So we were just really heightened and trying to make sure that you did all the requirements, precautions, and
yeah.
to the highest level. So I went home by myself, got all of the funeral arrangements ready with my sister and my brother.
Mm.
Very few people could come, which was hard in itself because the
So that was
town,
all during the restriction where they only had how many people were allowed at the funeral?
mm, I would say there was maybe 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I think that was hard too because my father was at every funeral and every wake,
Yeah.
rain or shine, standing out in the snow to be able to pay respects
Yeah.
in our town that's about 600 people. So I expected him to have the exact same, and it was so hard that there was nobody that could come.
Yeah.
So after his burial, I went back and I put a picture of my family,
Mm.
really great picture that my dad loved. It was like a Christmas picture from the year before.
Hmm.
And I put it in the flowers at his burial ground, and it blew away. And so I was just so hurt because it's like, well, it's just a picture, but it really meant more to me
Yeah,
because
of
it was
course.
like my family was there with me and with him, even though they couldn't be there.
Mm.
And so when it blew away, it was like, I've lost my dad. I
Mm.
lost my chance to say goodbye.
Yeah.
I've lost community. I've lost my own family to be here at the grave. And now I've lost this picture. And it was kind of like, I can do something about that.
Yeah.
And then there was nothing that really existed to hold items like in a box,
Mm.
mementos and different things. And
It's
so
so
then
complete, that whole blowing away, it's more than just a photo. The photo holds so much emotion and memory and connection, and that's all of that. That was what we were losing through COVID, not being able to connect, not being able to be there. And community is such a big part in our grief. I always say we don't heal well in isolation. And I think all of us got a really fair share of that during COVID. The whole, how do you heal in isolation when you feel so alone and excluded? Yeah.
yeah, it's very true because even David Kessler, he's does grief.com. He has a good
Yeah.
community. And one of the main things he says in finding meaning in one of his books is that our grief needs to be witnessed. And
Yeah.
that's part of the healing. And during COVID, it
Yeah.
really felt like it was not witnessed. So
It's
it
such an
was more of a
important.
therapeutic journey for me to create the visit box because it kind of gave me a nice release, a creative release, I guess, of building something in honor of my dad.
Yeah. I do want to talk about that in a moment as well. I just want to sidestep for a moment because you had to go to the funeral on your own. So you helped your mom arrange all of that, and there were 15 of you. How were you even able to travel during COVID to go up there? Did you have, because you were a close family member, you were allowed to travel up there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I could I had all of the like gear of being in home health. So I
Yeah.
had my face mask, I had the face shield, I had all of that and um it was really strict and like
Mm.
flying from Colorado to Indiana
Yeah.
um and then just it was really hard to even grieve with one another. It's like we are supposed to be close to the brokenhearted, and there was just nobody could be there. I have a best friend that was able to come,
Yeah.
um, but it was even difficult being at the funeral home
Mm.
and selecting like the casket and
Yeah.
flowers and what's allowed and what's not for people to come in and
Yeah.
that was just hard because I mean you are just if you weep, you know that you are just have snot and tears, and it's all like in the mask, and it's just really
Yeah.
hard in itself physically to just not be able to lament like you want to.
Yeah, of course. So how long did you have with your family before you went back to your little family?
Oh, well, my dad was taking a week before Thanksgiving. So he was called home um, right at that time. So then I was able to be home with my mom uh, for Thanksgiving,
Mm.
be with my sister.
Yeah.
But even that, it was kind of like we were in our own little bubble of my brother and his
Yeah.
wife and my sister. And, even all of her children couldn't come for the funeral. It was just really hard to travel.
Yeah.
So we had Thanksgiving together, which, I think with grief, it's just, you're just numb. Like I don't remember a lot of it at all.
I don't know how you feel about this, but I've had quite a few conversations about the very awkward and I almost want to say broken relationship between grief and gratitude, because there is a thing where you really do need to have the time and space to actually grieve your person, and then when people come in not knowing, not having experienced that, and I always say bless them for not knowing, and say, oh, just be grateful for what you have, be grateful that your kids are healthy, be grateful. It doesn't work like that. It's not that we're not grateful for that, but we still need space and time and that emotional space to actually process our emotions, process the grief before we can get back to being really grateful for the times we had with this person. And, when I went through Rob's passing, when my husband died so unexpectedly, I could not cope with people telling me, oh, just be grateful. You've got the boys and you'll always see Rob in the boys. And it doesn't work like that. You need to give me space to actually feel the feelings. And my focus was on happiness from the get-go because that's all I wanted. I wanted to create a happy life for the boys. Yet that didn't mean that I could go, oh, I'm so grateful for everything that we have and everything's fine. It doesn't work like that. Um, were you able to actually address that with your family, especially being Thanksgiving, which is such a time of gratitude, usually to go like, you know what, right now there's just our grief bubble, and actually address that directly and not try to do what you're supposed to do around Thanksgiving, big quotation marks?
Yeah. I think what was hard too is that the cardiologist, my dad's cardiologist, like called my mom while we were having Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
And it was hard because he had testing done before and they didn't find anything. And they're
Yeah.
like, she was getting this information after we buried my dad. And it was just like, okay, like, you're still in that phase of like shock. And then it's almost like, wait, did they find something? Like it was, you're still holding on, So we just really didn't process that. And then pretty much then I needed to get back to my family.
Yeah.
And it's just a healing time because I couldn't be mad at COVID, why my family wasn't there. I really couldn't, like, I'm not an angry person, or I don't really feel angry. Um, but I needed to be angry at something. And it was my husband was in the line of fire. It was like, you weren't there.
Yeah.
I am angry that I didn't get to say goodbye to my dad.
Mm.
Um, you know, you could have come if you want, like all of these things
Yeah.
were there, and trying to process that. And God bless him. He was like, you're absolutely right. Like whatever you are feeling, don't apologize for it. And I'm here for you. And that was
Beautiful.
huge.
That is really,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just one
that's
of those things
incredible.
where it's like
You've chosen well.
better or worse. And man, he just really
Shout out to
took
Hector. He's watching live. Thank you.
Oh yeah. That's right.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's a really beautiful testimony to your relationship as well. And on that note, do you mind me asking how you went after that? Because obviously it takes a lot for you to process it, and it also takes a lot for Hector to hold that space for you. And obviously he's done an incredible job. How do you feel has the way that you both handle it affected your kids as well? How old were they when you lost your dad?
Um, I heard again, being like on the with David Kessler's community, he said kids don't want to hear two things: your sex life and your grief life.
Yeah.
Like it's really uncomfortable for them to know what to say,
Mm.
knowing that I'm grieving and then they weren't there. And there was no streaming ability in my community, where there was just no bandwidth or anything. It's a very small one-stop sign
Mhm.
town. And so trying to figure out, okay, it's going to be live, then they can watch it while they're in Colorado,
Mhm.
didn't happen. So it was videotaped.
Yeah.
Um, but still to this day, it's too hard for them to watch, and I understand that they've come back and been able to put things in the visit box at his grave, been there so supportive. And that is only like through Hector being able to share, you
Mm.
know, mom needs quiet time, or, and my daughter is so intuitive with me. She's 10,
Yeah.
and she puts things in grandpa's visit box that's right there by his picture in our family room. I mean, it would just be anything. And so it was like, that's been helping for them to understand, like, I don't know what to say, but, or, you feel uncomfortable talking about it. Just ask me what's in the visit box and how I thought about my dad this week. And that's all I need to, that's enough support, because it's hard to talk about,
It
especially
is
with kids.
hard because I think it's also very much depending. I mean, I very much agree with what David says. The whole children don't want to know about your sex life. Obviously, it makes them very uncomfortable, and the whole thing about children are uncomfortable with your grief. I think I want to treat that with a little bit more. Um, I want to be careful around that because what you went through is very different to what I went through. In my case, it was my husband who died, and so my kids were very much affected. It was their grief just as much as mine. So I think it's a very different thing because I did need to address that. I did need to hold space for that. I did need to talk to them about it. And I think or feel very, very clearly, in my case, it made a huge difference for me to be quite open about my grief, because for them it would have been like, mom's not even sad, why am I so sad? Why is she not? I was trying to hold it together, and I was trying to chase happiness, to create this happy life for them. But there were also times where I'm like, if they don't see me fall apart, they think I don't care. It was not that I put it on for them, but I really needed to navigate that. So I don't think it's such a straightforward, children don't want to hear about your grief. I kind of know what he means by that, and I agree to a certain extent, but there's also different scenarios. I just wanted to put that out there because I feel it's very important to distinguish there as well. So, Regan, you've mentioned the visit box quite a few times now, and I really want to hear a little bit more about that. Can you actually tell our audience, what are you talking about here? What is it? Share what it is, how you came up with it. We sort of already touched on that. So give us a bit of an overview, how you got into this beautiful creation.
Yeah, it's almost like I like to say like a God wink at the grave, because I had that kind of in my mind. So the funeral and the picture was gone. I
Mm,
went back home, and then I really couldn't concentrate. I had huge grief brain fog for my work. I just was not 100% there. It was really hard. And so whenever I got done with a telemedicine for
mm,
a job, then I would go and start sketching and things. And I
mm,
went home in March, back home to see my mom and my sister, because it's March Madness, which is basketball. Indiana's just huge. It's just a big thing. So it's like, it was a big thing for my dad.
mm,
I'll go home in March. And so when I went out, then I went to the cemetery,
mm,
and there was not, we didn't have a headstone for months on end because of COVID. And generally, it takes a long time for a headstone to be created. Um, I didn't tell anybody. Well, I kind of talked about it a little bit with my sister, because my brother-in-law is a carpenter and just kind of him building things.
mm,
But I didn't tell anybody. I just was just kind of like, it was very like peaceful for me to be at the cemetery and think about the visit box. But my
mm,
mom was getting the headstone, figuring things out, and I was in Colorado figuring out the visit box without even telling her anything about it, like if it's going to attach or anything. And what's amazing is that what I created was like the perfect fit on his headstone. And so it's just a granite box, and
That's
then you just open it and you can just put things in there that people leave anyway. We've always had burial offerings throughout millions of years.
mhm,
But you see these things and then they're blown away, or cemeterians need to come and clean it up.
mm,
And they're just, it's things that are already there. They're
yeah.
just a little bit safer. And that's really what I felt like, of leaving something that is just so special.
Mm.
Um, I left a news release of an award that I got from the visit box. So it's like I went to his grave, and it was like I'm in the paper,
Yeah.
Dad, for this that I made for you. And it's kind of like whatever I would find in my dad's wallet is what I'm continuing the conversation with the visit box.
Yeah.
So I also went and tried out for Shark Tank. And so I did that before he died, and my wristband was in his wallet. And so then it was like, hey, I went there and did it again, Dad. And so I put that second Shark Tank wristband in the visit box.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was something that was really nice. And then I then it was another turn because then I realized that when I would go home, if I flew not in the area of my mom and dad's house, but I flew where my sister lives, I
Yeah.
wasn't able to go home to the grave. I wasn't able to go visit and
Yeah.
visit and have the visit box. So
Yeah.
then I created one that's indoors. And so it's like I can't go visit him, but man, I just Neva, my daughter's, she finds a feather and then she's like, this is for Papa John. And then she'll just put it in the visit box that's in our home. So it's kind of been one that then people relate to because they also are like, I have no place to visit. And it's just like, well, that's okay because I can have my quiet time, my journal time, just real peaceful time that's like, yeah, okay, Dad, I thought of you this week, kind of thing. And I saw this, or there's an ornament that I totally would have got you. I know that you would have loved it. And instead of just being like crying in the parking lot after I see it in the store, I just buy it and then I put it in the visit box because it's like memories have been made, but my visits don't need to stop with him. I always see him in some way. And I think a lot of people relate to that, those little signs.
Absolutely. I think what I love so much about this idea, I just imagine even just the energy of that box when you hold it, when you have that moment where you want to just sit quietly and just feel really connected. Just imagining holding that box and what energy all these items would have combined. I think there must be such a sense of connection as well. And
Mhm.
that's what we really miss the most, really, And for me, it's a really interesting point, actually, because people often ask me, when my dad passed away, I was 20, and a lot of people ask me, what do you miss the most about your dad? And I said, what I miss the most is like his hugs, the physical, just hugging him because like we were both huggers. I still am, and the same with my husband. I just the physical hug, the physical presence of a person because depending on your spiritual beliefs, my spiritual belief is that I'm still very, very connected to my dad, to my husband, to people who have gone before us because I feel guided by them. It's almost like they all become my guardian angels. That's how I like to see it anyway, or my guiding angels, really. And it's just so beautiful to think about it that way. And I feel that connection quite strongly because I am quite spiritual like that. However, the physical absence was still really challenging for me, than not being able to hug them. And I can see that it's obviously not replacing it. We all understand that, but I can see a lot of sense of peace in being able to hug this box, knowing that it's full of memories of that person or things that you want to share with that person. It's all about the connection between you and him, and that's what I love so much about it, because there's something physical that you can actually hold on to. And just what you said before, being at the cemetery and people doing the job, they're cleaning up what people left behind. I'm thinking to them, it's cleaning up and it might most likely go into landfill. But for those people who have lost those things that they're cleaning up, that's a really important piece of memory, like the photo that you shared. And I think that's what makes the visit box so beautiful, to hold these memories literally for us and be something that we can connect to. And in your case, like you said, share with your daughter or with your kids about that and go through the memories and share them. I really love that.
Yeah, there's something too about when you are with you probably realize this with community and family and there's always just that I don't know what to say kind of feeling like I don't want to bring up your dad because I don't want to make you sad, but also it's like I don't want to feel like I'm in this room like screaming inside that
Mm.
I want to talk about my dad, but nobody's going to bring him up, right?
Yeah.
And my family, all of Hector's family is here in Colorado. And I
Mhm.
know it's very uncomfortable, kind of like wanting to know how I'm doing.
Yeah.
But like I said, if you can just say, Regan, is there anything in the visit box? And it'd be like, yeah, actually there is. Like it's almost like this hopeful thing of,
Yeah.
when you were a child and you did like show and tell. Like it's just one of these things of, yeah, it's uplifting compared to it's like, how are you doing? And it's like, well, I don't know. But if it's
Yeah.
like, how was your week? Did you have anything new in the visit box? I remember last time, you had one of the leaves that Neva brought in. It's like, oh yeah, actually this kind of this happened this week and I printed it out and this is what is going on, like let's say it was a picture or if it was something else that I came upon that
Yeah.
I would have shared with him,
Mm.
like, oh, there's this picture of like when me and my brother and my sister were like kids and our very first dog, and it's like he would have totally loved this. This would have been such a great conversation.
Mhm.
So it's just like I'll put it in the visit box, and then when somebody wants to know what's in there, I'll be
Yeah.
like, I would have showed this to my dad, and it just continues. Whether it's feels like it's a visit box for me and
Yeah.
my dad, but then it ends up being a visit box for me and the community,
Yeah.
me and my family. And they
Beautiful.
always talk about that empty chair at a family gathering, that empty chair that somebody was supposed to be at, but it's like there can be an empty chair at the dining table while you're together, but there could be a full visit box. People just
Exactly. Empty chair,
talk
but full box. It's and definitely a full heart. So I think what really helps me is when people ask directly. So I have learned through the work that I do, I have learned to ask people directly, do you want to talk about him? It is such a beautiful and gentle question, and it's such a simple question that it gives people the chance to say yes or no. And mostly you will find that people would want to talk about it unless it might be a situation where it's too emotional and they're not in a position where they can allow that emotion in because they might have to be somewhere or go somewhere afterwards and they don't want to fall apart or whatever. But it's such a respectful and beautiful and gentle way to just say, do you want to talk about him? It's that simple. People, as you said, really struggle with this. Should I mention it? Should I not? If I don't mention him, then she might think I'm disrespectful or I've forgotten about him. If I do mention him, she might fall apart. People are too much in their head and overthinking this. It's that simple as, do you want to talk about him? Because it's such a beautiful, gentle question. And it shows that you do think about him and that you open that door. And if she or he wants to come through or not, that's absolutely up to them. Regan, I've seen something else come up that is new in store for you. There was something about a baton. Do you want to talk about that? Would you like to share?
Yeah. Um, so I love how the grief journey, you just, you'll always miss them. They'll always, you're never the same person. But when I have the visit box, whether it's at his grave or the one that's in our house, I always wanted something that's like maybe I could take with me
Mhm.
when I go places. And I thought about when I was in track, and he would always be cheering me on when I did the 400 or 1600-meter relay race with the baton. And I would visualize him just, always telling me, go, go, go. And the thing amazing with the baton, with the relay race,
Yeah.
is that the person can only go so far, that's handing you the baton. They can't go past, otherwise it's like a disqualification. So you have got to reach your hand back
I've watched
and
my
you've got to
walk
grab it.
another
Otherwise,
way.
they can't go
Yeah.
any farther. So it's like my dad is with me, but he can't go any farther at this point.
Yeah.
And he hands me that baton, and inside the baton, I put goals in there on pieces of paper. And
Yeah.
it's just like, what are the things that I will continue to honor and carry on his legacy and different things? And sometimes it's just being able to get out of bed is a goal. I'm going to hit that snooze button. I'm going to see that baton, and
Yeah.
I call it the go not gone baton, because
Yeah.
whenever anybody hands you that baton in a track meet, they will be cheering you on, and watching
Yeah.
you the whole time. And that's what I feel like with my dad. It's like
I love
he,
this so
me,
much.
yeah, he's cheering me on just from a different place, and he's not gone. He's
Yeah.
just a go not gone baton. So that's what I've been working on too. And I just love being able to have tangible tools in a digital world of being able to have these visual reminders
Yeah.
of your grief journey.
Yeah, I have to apologize. My bilingual brain, I always pronounce it baton. I didn't never realize it's actually pronounced baton. So I've learned something new here too today. Sorry.
That's okay.
I've got the best apology, you know, all the languages in my brain getting muddled up. So, um, this time went way too fast, but I just realized that we are almost at the end of it, or actually a little bit over, but doesn't matter. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. I don't want to just cut it off here. I do want to, before we go, ask you, I would always love to sum it up for people watching this. You know, what are your favorite three messages that, if anything, people say that's what you want them to take away from this conversation here? Thinking about your own story, what is it that you would like people to think about or do or take away from this?
Um, um, it has a lot to do with the rawness of being at the grave and still realizing that um, God meets you there, is already there. And so the love, even though I felt extremely alone, you're not alone. Like I didn't have my family, but still I had creativity, I had ideas, I had love that, and through loss, something beautiful was born. So
Yeah.
for the visit box, I think people all have that sixth stage of grief, finding meaning. You
Mm,
may not go through that stage, but it can be there to help. And so
yeah.
I would love people to know that you can embrace that creative side.
Mm,
That the whole part of the visit box is that memories have been made. People make memory boxes,
yeah.
but the visit box is one that needs to be out, for us to be able to still communicate positively about our loved one, with
Yeah.
our loved one. Just because they're gone doesn't mean that the visits don't continue. And I love seeing that with my clients, where they're just, even with child loss,
Yeah.
they really just want to continue buying little things for that child because it's just very special. Um,
Yeah.
in the grief journey, I just want people to know that, like you agree that there's a lot of different ways that you can see grief. And there is the time that you're just lamenting, you're so sad. And then there's these things with the go not gone baton where it's like, oh my goodness, I can just feel my dad's presence of just saying, I know you had that goal. Now just put it in that baton and just remember to keep on going with it. So I love that if people can understand and see
Yeah.
that part in their journey, that there's just a positive thing. And I was able to do a fitness competition 25 years later from when I did it when my dad was alive. And
Wow.
I just love being able to have that health and fitness
Yeah.
kind of part of it. Like you can do so much in your goals through grief.
Mm. Thank you so much. I really, really love your story. I love how, you know, out of grief comes creativity. I think there is really something about reinventing ourselves. There is always this opportunity in grief as well. You know, who do I want to be? What do I want to do with this? That's the sort of empowerment that we have in grief because grief is heavy enough. So I always like to point that out as well. Um, and before I let you go, please tell me or tell our audience here, where can they actually find this visit box? Can you give us a website where they can check it out and have a look at them?
Yeah. So the visit box is now being created into Hole in My Heart. So it's WHOLE in my heart. And that is going to be holeinmyheart.com.
Mhm.
And there'll be options to be able to get the visit box. It's shipped internationally. There's an option to have it engraved for the wooden ones. And so you can also find me on Instagram where it's Hole in My Heart, that's on there, or Reegs, that's my nickname, REEGZ
Okay.
17. So I can give you all that information, but they
I'll definitely
can,
put it in the show notes as well, so people can just click on the link. But yeah, for those
okay.
listening, because it's on Spotify as well. So same thing on Spotify, you will find the link to click on it. So with that
Yeah.
said, thank
Yep.
you
That
so
is the
much.
box. And then the baton is going to be there too. So
Perfect, perfect. I love that. The baton. I learned the new pronunciation of it in my head. I always had it wrong. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed spending time with you, Regan. Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch and we'll share the link afterwards as well for anybody who really enjoyed our conversation. Please feel free to subscribe to our channel. Click the notification bell so you actually get notified when we go live next, because we are live every week with Unsilence Grief now. So Regan, thank you so much for being here today. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. And everybody watching, have a good day or a good night wherever you are. Thank you. Bye for now. Oh, now I can't even see which button.